Good afternoon and welcome to the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber of Commerce Legislative Update featuring Congressman Fred Keller. Fred intends to share with us this afternoon about the omnibus spending legislation and coronavirus relief package. In order to make this event possible, we're grateful for the sponsorship and continued support of the Chamber's Chair Circle in 2020. These 35 key sponsors have made our strategic imperatives possible. Thank you, Chair Circle sponsors. Amy, I think we're ready to get started. I'm going to continue to do some administration here and work with some folks, but Amy, if you would take it away.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Last minute, and Chris and Bob, thank you so much for putting this together. Congressman Keller, thank you so much for joining us at such short notice. We have a very timely update coming along. I just want to introduce Congressman Keller by reminding everyone, because I know we're all very well aware of the work that had been done at the state level and continues to be done at the federal level by Congressman Keller and his staff, staying in touch with us at a very timely and personal level, making it known that we are, in fact, the greatest priority to his representation of us. And I don't want to take a lot of time to remind you of that. Like I said, I know that you're all very well aware. So thank you very much for joining us today for this update. I want to thank the Chair Circle members. They were on the slideshow at the beginning. Nearly 40 businesses who invest above and beyond membership in the chamber so that we can achieve some of our strategic goals. And the group's investment all year long has afforded the chamber the ability to pivot and help the members, and events like this in our virtual meeting rooms and topics are just the tip of the iceberg, and this is where the investment support. So a very big shout out and thank you to the Chair Circle members. Again, thank you to Congressman Keller and all the staff that are on the call and those that are unable to be on the call today for accommodating us. We're grateful to have such an attentive representative. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over. And Fred, if you could go ahead and get us rolling. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Amy. And again, I want to thank Chris and Bob and the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber of Commerce for putting this together and getting everybody on the call here. Just a couple of things I'd like to mention. You did notice that there are several of our team members on the call. Our Chief of Staff John Anzer, our communications guy Nick Barley, Ann Kaufman may be on the phone. She's our district director. Aaron Wilson, our legislative director. And the reason I point that out is, as you know, with any organization, you have a good team, and the fact that they're on with us helps them understand more as we have the dialogue. The needs of our district, and helps us advocate and make sure that our priorities are included in legislation that comes before Congress in making sure we're at the table for these discussions. So that's a little bit about our team and the members of our team that are on the call. I also want to thank Senator Yaw. I saw he was on the call earlier, and I want to thank our delegation at the state level. Senator Yaw, Senator Gordner, Senator Baker, Senator DeSanto. I look at the work they've done. Our representatives, you look at Garth Everett, who is retired, but Jeff Wheeland, Linda Culver, David Rowe, Kurt Mosser's in our area here, John Hershey. I could go through the hall. Tina Pickett up in the northeast, Jonathan Fritz, Clint Owlett up in the northern tier. Just a lot of good representation. And I want to point out the work they did in Harrisburg to get the budget together and get the state funded. with the CARES money that was passed in the first round. So hats off to the good work that they've done, because it certainly has helped us as we move forward into the negotiations that I want to talk about now. And the bill that just recently passed earlier this week, it was a massive bill that not only dealt with COVID-19 relief, but also dealt with funding the government instead of a continuing resolution, funding the government until the end of the fiscal year. A couple of things that I'll say about that, and I'll start with the COVID-19. There has been a lot of discussion. A lot of things in that are very beneficial for our businesses, our job creators, our working families, and one of that is the Paycheck Protection. That was a very big success, and the application period closed in August. That has now been extended. There's a second round in this legislation. Of course, this has not become law yet. There's likely going to be some more discussion, and I'll get into that later, of what may need to be done yet to get the president's signature. But right now, our assessment or our feeling is on it. The things that deal with the small business are widely agreed upon by all parties, and the sticking points don't have to do with the COVID things and the things that help our small businesses. Those are other issues. But the Paycheck Protection, as I mentioned, another round. There was about $138 billion left in that. That's going to be up to around 300 to 325 billion for most severely impacted businesses. Another important part of that is the deductibility for expenses that those funds were used for. We heard from a lot of people across the district. I know the chamber's been very good about making sure we got the input from the members of the chamber, and of course, having talked and knowing many of the businesses around here. That was important, those businesses that got that. And that was a thing that we had to work with Treasury and the Speaker on, but we're able to get that included. So, we look at that. There's also money in there for the distribution of vaccine to get us back to our old, what I call our old normal, so that we can be conducting businesses, kids can be in school, we can do all that. There was money included in that for opening schools safely, rural broadband, which is a big issue in our area. There was money in there for that, for deployment, about $300 million. And then there's another $250 million for the FCC and telehealth. So a lot of things that were helpful there. Also, there was what we call CFAP, that's the Coronavirus Farmers Assistance Program, which was very helpful to some of our farmers, whether it be dairy or other items from dairy farms in the district, that they were able to benefit from that, but producers of other crops. So there's additional money for that. So looking at those things, but the biggest thing that we've been advocating for, and the best stimulus we can have, is a job. And that Paycheck Protection enables businesses to keep people attached to their employer, allows us to get through this time and get on to 2021 and what getting back to a good economy would be. So we look at that. Couple things that weren't in it that I would have liked to see would have been the liability protection for not just our businesses, but our educational institutions, our hospitals. That was I was a little disappointed that we weren't able to get that into it. One thing that I don't think needed to be included in it wasn't included in it. And as an example, Pennsylvania, the fact that Senator Yaw, Senator Gordon, or our state reps were able to close the budget without additional money from the government right now. I think it's a little too soon to see what we need to do there, because as we open things up, that may change when we get into budget periods into next year. So that I would say would be to be determined. The vote we had, and I think this is an important part, it dealt with those items in the COVID-19, but then it dealt with many things with funding the government. And really, while I advocated for these things are in it. I didn't vote for the bill, and there's a couple reasons. And I think most of the people on this call know me. Amy, I know we've done a lot of work together, and Senator Yaw and Bob and a lot of the business people. This isn't the way we should be legislating. This isn't the way we should be conducting people's business in a big, massive bill that didn't go through regular order, through committees of jurisdiction, but was just basically negotiated in closed rooms. Although I will say, we had discussions because Leader McCarthy did a great job of making sure the members had the calls, not just with the leadership team, but also with the ranking members on the committees. So I thought, in spite of everything, the leader did a great job, and we were on the phone with Secretary Mnuchin when we were talking about paycheck protection. But still, it wasn't done in the openness of the committee hearing that the American people deserve. And that's a problem that I have with it, because there are things that didn't get included, like the liability protection that I talked about, and things that did get included because it was all rolled together with the funding that didn't have the opportunity to be discussed in open. And that's a problem I have with it. And additionally, the amount of debt that this puts on, not because we're doing paycheck protection, not necessarily because we're helping people that are unemployed, not necessarily because we want to help families, but because we're looking at how we impact foreign governments and money to build borders or for border security in the Middle Eastern countries when we don't even secure our borders. So that's just an example, but I could go on with many examples of that. But I want to make sure that the members of the chamber here knows, and the members, that if you have any issue with the government program or anything that rolls out with this, please reach out to our team. And that's the important part of having this call, to sort of discuss some of the things that are in the bill, what we're able to get into it. And of course, my rationale, because I know there's been a lot of dialogue around what's happened and the vote on this bill. As I don't know if people have followed the news, but the president came out last night and said, hey, there's a lot of spending in here that shouldn't be in here, and he would like to see that spending directed more toward American families, American workers, rather than being spent in foreign countries. So that's a little bit about the bill. That's a little bit about what's happening with it. Bob, I don't know if we want to just sort of open it up to some questions or dialogues. I mean, I could continue to go on and on for things, but there may be questions that members are on, that want to talk about. I just really appreciate the opportunity to be before the chamber and the members. For the last decade or so as a state rep, I've been able to come to the quarterly meetings at the Country Covered, the Transportation Committee meetings, and just really enjoy the opportunity to have the dialogue back and forth. So if you think it's appropriate, maybe we can just go to some questions.
Okay, thank you, Fred. I think, Chris, you have a process in place that you want to use for the Q&A. Maybe if you explain that process. I have two questions for the Congressman I'd like to start with, and that'll give folks time to queue up their questions in the format that you prefer.
Thanks,
Go
Bob.
ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Bob. So what we're going to do, gang, is that we have our chat feature enabled so that anyone can type a question. If it's important to you that question be posed exactly as you think of it, as you're thinking of it, we'd like for you to start with the chat feature and we can read those out for you. If, however, as that chat dies down, you'd like to ask a question audibly, we'd just like to rotate and take turns. If we go on too long, I'll jump in and move on to the next question. But we are going to kick off with Bob. So Bob, if you'd take it away with your two,
Okay.
and I'll facilitate the rest.
Thank you, Chris. And Senator Yaw, if you could feel free to jump in here, because I want to make sure we get this right. And my first question is going to be related to the liability issue, and thank you for bringing that up, Fred. And then my second question is going to be related to agribusiness. The first question I have for you, Fred, and I know you're in Washington, not in Harrisburg anymore. Actually, I know you're in Kramer, to be exact. My question is, in his veto message, Governor Wolf basically deferred, passed the baton, how do you want to say it, demurred maybe, to the federal government for the liability issue. My specific question to you, Fred, is, are you aware, can the federal government provide liability protection, in this case mainly to small businesses? These are businesses who have have followed all the regulations, have done the masking, have done the cleaning, have done everything they've been asked to do, but yet they are still basically hanging out there at the mercy of the next lawyer that wants to find a client and take them to court because the tracing or the tracking is such that they can say, well, my client got COVID by coming to your restaurant or by doing something there. They are following, by and large, their CDC guidelines, but their state regulations that are regulating the restaurants and other retail establishments. Can the federal government provide that liability? Was the governor in any way correct when he deferred to the federal government for liability protection? Tell us more about what you know about that.
Okay, I do know that there are some states that have done some liability protections. So some states have done that. And I understand that, you know, where the role of the federal government is. And there is probably some things we can do there. Whether or not they would have to be supported by state legislation, that could be determined in a court. But when you're looking at federal regulations and you're looking at protection, and I guess you could probably go to interstate commerce. You know, the federal government has jurisdiction when business is conducted across state lines. So I think there would be some arena there for the federal government to be able to provide protections. And looking at this, I would think that in some states they could either do probably more, but maybe not less in some of those arenas in providing that protection. But I think there might be some level, and that's just an opinion, as there is with anything. And if there's any attorneys on the call, they could probably attest to this, that you can do it, but sometimes it might be challenged and decided in court. But I do think that there's an ability for the federal government to have some space there where we provide some level of liability protection. So okay. That's the opinion that I've talked to several people and would believe. States do have the ability to do it, but I think there's some space there the federal government could set an example and maybe get the ball rolling. Okay, I do want to mention one thing, Bob, if I could, and I didn't mention it before, but in the Paycheck Protection, 501c6s have been included in that legislation. So for the chamber, I didn't put that in there, but it's one of these things as I talk, something comes into my mind of that was either in it or we need to discuss. But anyway, I wanted to put that out to you too.
And we greatly appreciate that, Fred, and your leadership in that regard. Senator Yaw, do you want to? Did I characterize the question correctly, and did I misstate anything? Please clarify if I did.
No, I think you stated it correctly. I don't know the answer to the question. I mean, I never, when the governor vetoed that bill, I know what he said, and I just thought he was ducking the, he was ducking the question, frankly. I'm not sure. I just don't know if there's somebody else on the line that knows. I don't know of any other situation involving strictly state action where the federal government has stepped in and provided some kind of relief from liability. I'm just not aware of it. Now, I agree. This is an entirely different situation, and Fred may be absolutely correct that there is a opportunity here for the federal government to step in, but I don't think that across the board, the state laws differ so much for liability in situations like that we anticipate could be coming, whether it's from restaurants or nursing homes or whatever it might be. State law liability issues vary so much. That's the part that causes me some question about how the federal government could have a one-size-fits-all liability protection issue. I think that something needs to be done. I agree out there that we were really disappointed when the governor decided to do what he did, But you know, I actually, I will say this, I had people tell me, you know, that we needed to be careful about the liability. And that came from businesses that were exposed or could be exposed. But they also said, if we're doing all the right things, you know, a liability or a freedom from liability bill, which goes too far, kind of rewards those who violate all the rules, and we don't want that. So there was some internal controversy in the bill among people who it would apply to. So all those issues are out there.
If I could just sort of jump back in there, I know when I was in Harrisburg, we did some of the liability reforms in Pennsylvania. I do know the laws are much different from state to state, but where the federal government might come in is, you know, tying, you know, having states or requiring states to do something with liability and tying that to some kind of funding or something that comes through the federal government might be an option to do that. But I know we had liability protections. It was a few years ago where people used to be able to sue even if somebody had. I think it dealt with the percentage of liability that somebody had 1% culpability, you know, was 1% at fault. You couldn't sue them for the whole thing. It was we sort of restricted how many they could. And I don't remember all the details on it. That was probably what, 5 or 6 years ago, Senator, that we did that. But
yeah, I think unfortunately it was longer than that, Fred.
Okay.
Wasn't
more than 10. Wasn't more than 10.
Fred, Chris is letting me know that he has 6 questions in the pipeline. So the next question I'm going to ask is we're going to be very quickly to everyone else. Keep those questions coming. We don't mind. We can build more pipeline. We love pipelines in Pennsylvania. But anyhow, that was the double entendre there. Fred,
I appreciate that, but I appreciate that.
I thought you would, Gene. Hey, Fred, agribusiness and agriculture. You mentioned it in your introductory remarks. We really need to dig deeply into this issue on agriculture. And I guess my question is that one that you would be willing, along with your staff and maybe Secretary Perdue or somebody, we could really dig in deeply into what we can do to help the farmers and the agribusinesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley?
Absolutely. If I can just sort of start with this, there was 13 billion in support in the bill for farmers, ranchers, in agriculture and agribusinesses. You totally get that. Just as a bit of background, and I did mention earlier that Erin Wilson, our legislative director, is on the call. In addition to working with GT, she worked with GT. Erin was also in the USDA prior to coming onto our team. So we've got somebody with some great experience. And another thing I would like to say is the ranking member on the House Ag Committee is Congressman Glenn Thompson. So I thought that was a positive thing when the steering committee put him on as the ranker, for ag. So absolutely, and with Erin's expertise, I think we could probably maybe just for that segment of that group of businesses, Bob, maybe we can set up another meeting and really dig down into the issues and what might be available there to help.
Okay, appreciate it. Chris, the show is yours.
Thank you. Congressman, my first question from the chat is from Kristen Moyer at CEDACOG. Her question is, there were original CARES funds allocated to the counties that had to be dispersed by December 30th, 2020. The counties have done their best to spend the funds prior to the 12/30 deadline. I thought I saw something in the bill language that the deadline was extended to the end of 2021. Can you confirm that the deadline has been extended, and is it retroactive to the first round of CARES funds? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is our understanding from everything that we've seen, unless some of these things might change as if the president doesn't sign it the way it is and we go back to negotiate. But it's our understanding, and this is one that's agreed on. While there's not additional money for state and local governments, the deadline to spend the CARES money was extended to the end of 2021. It did not change the requirements for what it could be used, the items you could use it for, but it did extend that CARES funding to the end of 2021.
Thanks, Congressman. Our next question is from Bob Zimmerman. he asks, my accountant tells me that the PPP forgiveness process includes a large tax liability to the businesses. Can legislation be put in place not to penalize the businesses who kept their employees working? Can Congress push so that PPP funds, when forgiven, are not subject to be accessed as income to the companies?
Actually, that's a great question, Bob, and that was one of the last things that we got nailed down in the legislation that passed just a couple nights ago. We were on the phone with Secretary Mnuchin discussing this, and there were some people that felt that because they didn't have to include that as income, they would not be able to deduct the expenses that they used the money for. This bill actually fixes that, because we heard that loudly and clearly from a lot of businesses, and would allow the businesses to deduct the expenses they use that money for, because they would have used it for payroll, they would have used it for fixed expenses. And the argument I look at is, while it may not have been included as income, they should be able to deduct the expenses, because if you're paying payroll, if you're paying your fixed costs, your variable costs of your electricity and stuff, but if you're covering those costs, you're generally making a little bit of profit to reinvest in your business. So that you don't have when we're just keeping people on a payroll and paying the mortgage. So the idea in this was to make sure that you could deduct the expenses that you use those forgivable loans on, and that is in the legislation. One other thing is a simplified, and I didn't hit on this earlier, I apologize for that, but a simplified forgiveness application for loans that were under $150,000, which was, by talking to a lot of our lenders, the vast majority, over 70 to 75% of the loans were under $150,000. I know businesses in Lycoming County, they got $15,000. I know some that might have gotten, there's a couple, one or two man operations that might have gotten $5,000 in other parts of the district. So looking at this, there were some positive things there, but that was put into the bill, but that was one of the last items we got put in before they started to write the text.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question is from Jennifer Hain from the Sun Area Technical Institute. I know you spoke earlier about liability protection. Is there any possibility of liability protection for schools?
Well, as we were discussing, we would love to see that. That would be great. Some of that is going to likely have to come from the state government too. As we mentioned earlier, some states, and I do know some states, there's some members of Congress that have told me their state has already done some liability protections. So I'd be willing to work on that and still explore, are there ways we can get some of these governors that don't want to do that. You know, the senator and his colleagues in Harrisburg certainly did a good job in trying to get some of that out for people, and unfortunately it didn't get past the governor's desk.
Congressman, our next question is from Erica Mulberger from the Central Pennsylvania Workforce Development Corporation. She says, thank you for this opportunity. Will the proposed 11 weeks of the additional $300 weekly payments for unemployment compensation claimants be retroactive, or will it apply only to new applicants? If it is retroactive, will it apply to individuals that have exhausted their UC benefits during the pandemic?
And this was really a big issue we heard from a lot of people as far as employers trying to get people back to work when it was at $600. Again, we want to incentivize people getting back to work, getting back to their job, having their employer being able to, the entire team be producing things. The unemployment stays at $300. That's the executive order President Trump had put in place when the $600 expired, and then let it up to the states to do some of the other things. The unemployment and the $300, the federal extension and the $300 goes until the beginning of March. I believe it's March 14th. So it's actually the middle of March. If an employee has not used, or a worker has not used their entire 39 weeks, and I think in some cases it can be up to 50 weeks, they can go out to April, I think it's April 5th. So they can go out a couple more weeks. That's one of those areas where, and I think it was said early on when we set this up in the CARES Act, our governor said, well, they don't have to go back to work. Well, they do. If somebody's offered a job, they have to come back to work, or they don't get the unemployment. And there really needs to make sure there's not confusion on that. What we want to do is we want to help people through no fault of their own that can't go to work. We want to help businesses through no fault of their own that can't conduct business. But certainly when we're able to get people back to work, we want to see them returning to the workforce. So the $300 is in place in most cases, until March. And if somebody hasn't exhausted all their benefits, they could go until the beginning of April. But it doesn't, I'm not seeing anything where it goes back and pays it retroactively. It does some of those things for some of the rent assistance and those other things, goes back and does a retroactive. But we haven't seen that yet in what we've seen in the legislation, that it's retroactive.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question is from Rick Dandies of the Daily Item. His question is, Congressman, are you in support of the president wanting to give individuals $2,000 instead of $600?
Well, I think if we look at what the president said, and let's not take any of it out of context, the president had a press conference last night. And he said, hey, look, we're spending all this other money on things that aren't for coronavirus and protecting borders and a whole bunch of other things in other countries. Rather than do that, he would see the $2,000 per individual, per citizen, per child, so on, adult and child. But the thing is, we've got to come up with the money to pay for that somewhere. So in other words, just to go to $2,000 and not take the money from some of those other things that the president outlined would not be the thing to do. Because keep in mind, sooner or later, we're going to have to repay this debt. Not us. I mean, I'm 55. The Speaker of the House is 80. And when she came and said, well, she wanted $3 trillion, and then she said when the Republicans come with $2.2 trillion, she'll be ready to talk. The problem is, it's not the Republicans' money, it's not the Democrats' money, it's not the people in Washington's money, it's the taxpayers' money. And they're going to have to pay it back. So I'm not opposed to looking at things, but what I would say is if we're going to do that, then what we need to do is we need to come up with the cash somewhere, and that means the Speaker and the people that held up real relief that could have been done 40 times. We had a bill that would have done this paycheck protection stuff back in August, and the Speaker blocked bringing it up 40 times. And then she finally admitted she did it for political reasons. She did it to wait after the election. But anyway, we got to make sure that we cut out some of these things that don't support working families, American families. And if we want to do that, let's have the discussion, but we got to come up with the cash somewhere rather than just borrowing more.
Congressman, our next question is from Joe Weiser. He says, how do you see the new regime in DC on January 20th changing the economic landscape?
I think when you look at policies going forward under a new administration, I'm not sure. I think, I think if we can, we're going to be very close in the House to just, there's going to be just a very slight majority. If we keep the Senate in Republican hands, I think you'll see more of a balanced government. That would be more positive in making sure that we don't get too many regulations. Because one thing I'm going to say, and I think our businesses on this call, one, we all want to make sure that our environment's clean. We have clean water, clean air, all that. Our businesses, when I was in private industry, I got the business of the Bay Award at Conestoga out in Beavertown because of our recycling efforts. Okay, support all that. So our businesses support those things. But the President Trump was still able to claw back regulations that allowed our businesses to grow. And that's the common sense environment we need. And to do that, we need to hang on to the Senate, and that would go a long way in making sure that we have a more balanced look at how things go.
Our next question is from Kristen Moyer from CEDACOG. She asks, Congressman, could you provide some clarification on the extension of the eviction moratorium to January 31st, 2021? Is this just for renters? Does this apply to private mortgage foreclosures? I also thought I read in the language that publicly funded mortgages were covered under the extension.
Yeah, this does cover a variety of items, but here again, I think we need to look at the the moratorium exclusion. It does, there's things in there for mortgages, it is in there for rent. The businesses and those that got paycheck protection, I would hope they use that for some of that. And quite frankly, working people that got the $1,200 or people that were unemployed that got the additional $600, I would hope that they would have used those funds to pay their rent, because having been a property manager, I had my own properties. My buddy and I had a business, and we had rental units. You still have bills to pay, and I think that's an important thing for us to remember. That just because somebody owns a building doesn't mean they're just collecting all that rent and it's all profit. They've got taxes to pay, they've got insurance to pay, they've got the mortgage to pay. So the moratorium goes to the end of January. In some of it, the public mortgage is they apply to that too. It applies to some rent. If you would like, actually, what we can do for Kristen and anybody has any questions, I'll have Aaron get that section and make sure that. And we'll get that to you, Chris, and maybe you can just get that out to everybody, just to make sure that there's no other questions. Aaron Wilson, you're on the call. If you wouldn't mind just taking that section of the bill and making sure we put an analysis together and get it out to everybody, I appreciate it.
Sure, sounds good.
Thanks.
Congressman, I don't have additional questions in the chat, but given that he's on the call and on our Governmental Affairs Committee, I'd be remiss if I didn't offer Rick Knoebel the chance to give you an invite over to Joy to the Grove. Rick, you want to jump in?
Hi. Yes, absolutely. If you get a chance to come through Joy Through the Grove, we're open every night until except Christmas Eve and Christmas until January 3rd.
I appreciate that. My wife and daughter and grandkids were over when I was down in DC early in the week. They had a fabulous time. They loved it. So I think they had some cotton candy and some other stuff while they were there. So they had a good time. But no, I appreciate that. I did want to mention something too. I saw, and Chris, this is just something I saw that my friend Malcolm Dirk is on the call. As I understand, he's the chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee now. And I just wanted to let everybody know the good work that Malcolm does for Susquehanna University for people, our college students, and he did a great job as county commissioner. So I gotta throw that out there too. But I just wanted to say hi to Malcolm and Knoebels. I hope we are open next year so that I can. I'm looking forward to being out and being able to ride I like the Phoenix. That's my favorite ride.
Congressman, I did get another question from Jen Hain at Sun Area Technical Institute. She says, I see funding will be distributed to K through 12 schools, but will any funds be earmarked for career and technical schools?
Yeah, there was some language that dealt with post-secondary education and the distribution of that. I'll have to, and again, I'll have if Jen doesn't mind. And again, I know Jen. She has been very helpful to me when I was in the State House, making sure like the Perkins grants and all that kind of stuff and what we did. And I appreciate her work at SunTech. They do a great job. But I'll have Aaron get all that together and send it over to Jen, and actually probably share it with Malcolm too, so that Susquehanna University has that information too, because there are funds for post-secondary education. Aaron, anything to add on that?
No, I'm happy to double check on career and technical education. Like the Congressman said, there is a fair amount of funding for post-secondary. There is a pot for K through 12 and then another pot for post-secondary and another pot of money for private schools. So I'm happy to take a look and see where career and technical education schools fall on that.
Yeah, we'll get that out there to Jen and also to Malcolm, and maybe you guys can distribute it to the committee members or the members of the chamber as you see fit.
Hey, Fred, it's Bob Garrett again. Chris just sent me a note, says I'm up. So here we go. Hey, I noticed that Linda Schlegel-Culver is on the call, and Senator Jean Yall is with us. We would be remiss if we didn't give them each a few moments just to bring us up to date on what's going on. I think even though as my mom told me to let ladies go first, I think the way it works with elected officials is the senator goes before the representative. But I'll let you guys arm wrestle that out. Linda and Jean, any updates?
Well, depends on what you want updated, I guess. You know, the big issue in Pennsylvania right now is the election. What happened at the election, whether there are, you know, glitches or problems with our system. And I think both the House and the Senate have made the commitment that they're going to take a look at the whole election process that we have. You know, one of the issues out there is the mail-in ballots. You know, I think whether we like them or not right now, I think mail-in ballots are probably here to stay. That's, you know, it really was a service to some of the people. Were there problems with it? In some cases, I don't think that we were prepared to handle the volume or the acceptance that people had. I also think that there was some confusion introduced in it. You know, to be very honest, one of the parties jumped on mail-in ballots right off the bat. The Republicans were against it at first. And then about halfway through the election process, they switched over and said, oh yeah, we're going to send out absentee or no excuse ballot applications to everybody. And they did. So I think that, you know, part of the confusion was created by the parties themselves, but it is something we're going to take a look at. Fred, I have a question that relates to this bill that was proposed or has been proposed. And maybe this is more than we want to talk about now, but I think that it involves the chamber, involves Lycoming County Chamber and this whole area. And that has to do with the airport in Montoursville. My understanding that there's language in this bill, and I don't know how it works in the transportation part, that requires American Airlines to continue to serve Lycoming County until March 31st. I'm sure you're aware of the fact that American Airlines had established a commuter, a new system to fly from Williamsport to Charlotte. They announced it one day. They had the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know, maybe the Greater Susquehanna Valley Chamber was involved in it. They took a flight, flew a bunch of people to Charlotte to tell them how this was going to work. There were the airport here spent over $100,000 advertising it. 2 days later, American Airlines said we're canceling all service to Williamsport. Now, as a result of this bill, it's being extended, but I think that we need to get involved in this in a bigger way. And, you know, Fred, the reason I bring it up is because apparently it made its way into this bill, which means it's pretty important. And my understanding is there's only 3 airports like this in the country that American has canceled out. So I want to bring it up now because it's part of this bill, but I think it's something we need to maybe work on together or take a look at, get you, GT, Dan Muser. It's a big deal, and I think we're being used.
Yeah, we actually, and I can elaborate a little bit on that, Senator. We actually, I was up there when they announced that inaugural flight. It was a great thing, and then American did what they were going to do, and we worked with Jason Fink out of the chamber up in Lycoming County, and that's on our radar screen because we see that too. That service into Williamsport to us is so vital that they have service in there. And what American Airlines did, we were on the phone with when we talked with Jason and also with the people at American, and when they made their decision to do this, we let them know how much we disagreed with it. And so yeah, your point's very valid. We want to make sure that there's service maintained into Lycoming County. let's work on that. I guess we'll get together. We'll work on that with Jason, and maybe we can rope.
Jason has jumped on the call, and I asked him to feel free to jump in on this conversation. So Jason, have at it. It's typically a professional courtesy between chambers. We invite each other to these kind of sessions. So Jason, feel free to jump in.
I will definitely, and I apologize for hopping on late. And thank you, Bob, for the opportunity. And thank you both to Congressman Keller and to Senator Yaw for advocating on this. I was just actually on a call with the director of the airport here talking about this because it is something that they are obviously very concerned about. Congressman, we're going to be reaching out to you and the two senators here as well, both Senator Toomey and Casey, to see if there's a way that we can work with our delegation to look at some language to be able to protect not only this airport, but the other two that were referenced by Senator Yaw, because of the fact that American has been pretty clear in the fact that they are pretty much just doing this for the 3-month window that they have to do this. You know, it's from somebody who flies, you know, there's no confidence here locally that they're going to be here beyond that, which is going to be a challenge for the local airport to go sell this service. There needs to be some type of protection for these airports to be able to know that they can go out there and spend, you know, the fact of the matter is they've got money to spend through the CARES Act to be able to market service. They've also received federal funds just a couple of years ago to be able to enhance the airport. You know, the feds have a lot of money invested in this asset. And I think it's important now that they hold American to honoring that commitment to provide service from there. So we'll be reaching out to you on this.
Perfect. Look forward to continuing to work on that with you, Jason. Thanks.
And thank you, Jason, Senator Yaw, and Fred. Linda Culver, you, it's good to see you, or at least see your name, and anything you want to bring us up to date on. And I noticed that Jeff Reber, Commissioner of Union County, is with us as well. Jeff, will give you a moment to say something after Linda. Linda? Well, I think we'll go to Jeff in that case. Jeff Reber, Vice Chair of the Board of Commissioners of Union County, is with us. Jeff, any updates from Union County?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And Fred, thank you for joining us and for the update. Keep fighting a good fight down there. I really don't have any updates at this point in time. I'd just like to clarify to Kristen Moyer's question, though, regarding the extension of federal CARES funds. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that and what that means for us as a county?
You're talking about the extension to spend the funds that you received under the CARES Act?
Yes.
Yeah, that would apply to the money that came from the federal government, either directly to the counties or the local governments, or through the state. Now, I don't know if there'd be any kind of additional restrictions that may have been placed on some of those funds that then the state put out as grants. That to me would not be clear, Jeff. Okay. That's something that I know when Governor Wolf put some of those monies out, whether it was education or other, there may have been some additional criteria placed upon them. Not sure if there was, but was in this bill. It did not expand the scope for which the federal government said it. The federal government said it could be used for these items. That's still the same scope of items you could use it for. Just changed the date from the end of 2020 until the end of 2021. Aaron, is there anything different on that? We have Aaron on the call. I guess I would just ask her to say if there's anything different on that than what I just said. If she saw anything different in the bill.
Not to my knowledge, but I'm happy to double check.
Okay, but that was our understanding from the reading of the legislation, that we didn't change any of the scope. We just said instead of the end of 2020, you had to December 31, 2021. Right, Aaron?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for participating with us today. Congressman, thank you so much for taking some time, especially right before the holiday. Really appreciate you jumping in with us. Thank you to our Chair Circle sponsors. I wanted to share that one more time. It's because of the Chair Circle that the Chamber can invest in strategic initiatives like this. And thank you also to our other elected officials, Senator Yaw, Representative Culver, Commissioner Reber, for joining us today. I do want to share with you that our meeting has been recorded. Our discussion has been recorded. And what we'll be doing is we'll be just processing that recording, and it'll be posted to our Chamber's YouTube account. If you simply go to YouTube and search GSV Chamber, you'll find it so that you can reference back to the answers in these questions that you've asked. And with that, unless there's any concluding remarks from Congressman Keller, I think that would wrap our time.
Well, again, if I could just say thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. Thank you to all the people that joined the call. I really appreciate the work that Senator Yaw, Senator Gordner, Representative Culver, Wheeland, Rowe. They've done a great job. Our county commissioners are outstanding all across PA 12. Just appreciate your work. Appreciate the work of all the businesses and their teams, because they really make it possible. That is what it's going to be to recover. It's going to be us all working together, and we can't do that without the outstanding people that the Chamber represents and their employees. So we thank you for that. We wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. Celebrate the holiday in your faith, but we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I just really appreciate the ability to be with everybody again. I miss seeing you in person, and I'm looking forward to that time again. Thanks.
Good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a lovely holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks.